Hey, what's up guys? Justin here and welcome to 65 Drums. Today I'm answering a question, what is the loudest mesh head that money can buy? Now this might seem like a really strange question to even ask. Don't we buy mesh heads in the first place because they're quiet? That is true for most drummers, but apparently there are some that need something that's louder than mesh heads, but quieter than acoustic heads. There's a middle area there, so we're gonna go over those, do some volume tests, and show you what they sound like compared to like regular roll-in mesh heads. So a little while ago, I got this email that kind of sparked my interest and made me want to make this video. So Stuart writes, "Hey Justin, I've been watching and enjoying your videos very much. I was hoping you can help me with my quest. Currently I have a set of Traps drums at home. They're single-sided with no shells. Living in an apartment can make playing very challenging. I have Remo Silent Stroke heads and Zildjian L80s. My problem is that the cymbals are just way louder than the drum heads. Can you recommend to me the loudest mesh drum heads? Having no shells isn't helping either, I know, and any suggestions about dampening the cymbals might also help." So one thing that I've learned recently is that there's this kind of drummer out there that A, can't play acoustic drums because, it's an apartment, there's volume constraints, but they also don't really want to play an electronic drum set, either because it's too expensive to get a nice one or because they just don't like the idea of it. So what they end up creating instead is a combination of the two. They've got a drum set that has low volume cymbals and mesh heads. It's not really electronic, it's not really acoustic, it's a practice drum set. And the problem that arises when you create a drum set like that is the fact that the mesh heads end up being really, really quiet. Remo Silent Strokes, they're very thin. They're incredibly quiet. Meanwhile, Zildjian L80s, they're metal. Even though they've got lots of holes in them, they're metal, they're still gonna be pretty loud. So some people put like acoustic heads as the resident head, trying to bring back some of the warm tone, make it a little bit louder. That definitely helps. But for some people, that's not loud enough. So one thing that you could do is just buy mesh heads that are louder than Remo Silent Strokes. So thankfully, I've gotten a chance to play a lot of different kinds of mesh heads. Just behind me right here, I have 14 individual different types of mesh heads. Different weaves, different thicknesses, different plies from different companies, and really they all fit into 4 categories. And one of those categories produces the loudest mesh heads that you can possibly buy. So category number 1 is 2-ply mesh heads. These are the most common. They're on all the different Roland drum sets, Alesis drum sets, Simmons drum sets. They're very, very common. Popular with manufacturers. Type number 2 is the 3-ply mesh heads. These you usually have to buy online. The Drum Tech Real Feel line is 3-ply. Joe Becky uses 3-ply mesh heads. Billy Blast uses 3-ply mesh heads. A lot of companies that are like more niche, they end up using 3-ply mesh heads, and I think they're the superior of the two right there. The third type is the thin 1-ply mesh head. So this is your Remo Silent Strokes, your Pearl Muffle heads. Drum Tech also makes a very thin 1-ply mesh head as well. And then finally, the fourth type, the loudest type out of all of them, is the thick 1-ply mesh head. And not many companies actually produce something like this. There's only a couple of them that I've ever even heard of. Out of all the different kinds of mesh heads that I've tried, these are the standouts. I don't even need a decibel meter to know that these are the loudest mesh heads by a mile versus all the competition. So this one right here is a Go-E drum mesh head. And this one right here is a Drum Tech Pro mesh head. They're both very thick 1-ply mesh heads. Okay, so now that you've seen them both in action, you've heard what they sound like, and you've seen the decibel difference between the two, which one is the better buy for most people? This is kind of difficult to answer exactly because it depends on where you live and which one you like the sound of more. Now let's talk about which one you like the sound of more. It's kind of important because if you're the kind of person that needs something to be as loud as your Zildjian L80s, you're gonna buy the one that you just like the sound of acoustically more. So if you like the Drumtech sound, go buy the Drumtech one. If you like the GoEdrum one, go buy the GoEdrum one. Neither of them sound that great, to be honest. They're not designed from the ground up to sound good, but if one has an edge for you, then go for that one. The second consideration is where you live in the world. If you live in the United States, it's way, way cheaper to buy the GoEdrum ones because you can buy these with free shipping off of eBay. You can buy a full set of these for like $150 depending on the sizes. Meanwhile, Drumtech, without shipping, it's going to be like $170. I'm not exactly certain on the shipping prices because Drumtech says it depends on the weight of the package, so it could be $40, it could be more than that, we're not exactly sure. But all I know is that the price will be over $200 for these, it'll be around $150 for the GoEdrum ones. So it depends on the sound that you want and where you live in the world, which one you should buy. As far as which one is flat out the superior drum head, I'd say the Drumtech one is. It has a very accurate bounce to it. It feels more like an acoustic drum head than any other mesh head that I currently have in my entire collection. But what if you want to make your current mesh heads just a little bit louder? Is there anything you can do? There's a couple of things. The major one is probably just putting an acoustic head as your resonant head, so it'll ring a little bit as you're playing, giving it some warm overtones, or you could just remove the resonant head altogether, and that will still be louder than if you had like a pillow inside the shell, or if you had like just a mesh head as a resonant head. Okay, so now let's segue to another topic. About a month ago, I put out a poll on YouTube saying, which do you prefer, white mesh heads or black mesh heads? The reason why I was asking this is because I was in a meeting with an electronic drum company, and somehow the topic of mesh heads came up, and they were asking me which do drummers prefer, white mesh heads or black mesh heads? And I said that I thought it was white mesh heads just because I saw them everywhere and companies tend to sell what's, selling the most. But I wanted to make sure, so I posted that poll on YouTube and also Facebook. I know it's a dumb question to even ask. Do you like blue cars or red cars? Do you like white paint or green paint? It doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, but here are the results and I found them to be fairly interesting. 37% of people preferred black mesh heads, and 63% of people preferred white mesh heads. Now, of course, everybody's different, but what I found for me personally is that I like what I'm used to using. So when I had white mesh heads, I preferred the look. When I switched over to the Pro Drumtech mesh heads, I ended up liking black mesh heads. So it just depends on what you're used to looking at. Now, the interesting thing is that it doesn't work that great for photos in my basement, because look at this photo right here. I have black mesh heads, black cymbals, and then black carpeting. And because there's all that like same color over and over again, thumbnails didn't really pop as much and you have to do more work in post-processing to make thumbnails look better. But it kind of just depends on what carpeting that you have. It sounds dumb, but that's the reality of it. But of course, there's one thing we can all agree on. No matter what kind of mesh head that you prefer, we all hate large logos with big copyright numbers cluttering up the look of everything. A clean drum head is a better drum head. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, click that subscribe button because it really, really helps out the channel, or hit that thumbs up button, or both. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all in a few.